Welcome to the Mind Body Business Show. The 3 keys to your success is just moments away. Here's your host, Brian Kelly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mind Body Business Show. We have an amazing show for you tonight. I want to get right into it and get as much value in your wonderful brains as we possibly can. So real quickly, the Mind Body Business Show, it is a show by entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs and business people to help you to achieve success faster, to reach your peak. And instead of doing it on your own, is simply to model those who are successful before you. And my guest expert is going to have so many nuggets for you tonight that you will be able to walk away with so many actionable items. So be sure to take out your notebook and write notes. Mind is all about mindset. And what I realized over a course of over a decade, I studied successful people, and 3 different things kept coming up. 3 different things, the patterns of these successful people, and they were in mind and mindset. That is one of the 3 areas. I bet you can guess what the other 2 are. That's about a flexible and powerful mindset. And speaking of powerful, we're going to be talking about that tonight in another realm, and that's where we come into body. Body is about taking care of yourself physically and nutritionally. Everyone that I studied that had reached a very phenomenal level of success had a very powerful and flexible mindset, number 1, and number 2, took care of themselves physically and nutritionally. And then business, that's multifaceted. That includes things like sales, marketing, team building, scaling, systematizing. The list goes on. And these individuals had mastered all of these areas of business. Now, here's the good news. You might be thinking, well, gosh, Brian, how am I going to master all of that? That's a lot. And it is. Well, the good news is you do not have to, nor should you, because you can delegate to those who have those talents and stick with your core competencies. We all have our own God-given talents. Stick with those and delegate out the rest. And that is what these successful people do. And so along the lines of success, you see a lot of nice looking books behind me. One of the other traits I noticed in studying these wonderful, successful people and following them is that they all tended to be avid readers. And with that, we're going to segue real quickly into a segment I affectionately call Bookmarks.
Bookmarks. Born to read. Bookmarks. Ready, steady, read. Bookmarks. Brought to you by reachyourpeaklibrary.com.
Yeah, there you see it, reachyourpeaklibrary.com. And by the way, for all of you watching and listening right now, do yourself a huge favor and stay with us. And what do I mean by that? You're going to be getting resources by way of websites, maybe books, maybe other resources. And the tendency is to go off and look at them. Well, instead of doing that, maybe do something old school and take out a good old fashioned piece of paper and a pen and take some notes instead, and then stay with us. Do not go off on another tab on your browser or anywhere else on your phone, wherever you happen to be watching or listening, because here's the thing, the magic happens in the room. Now, I know we're not in a physical room, but I think you understand what I mean there. As long as you are paying attention, and, I would hate for you to go wandering off, looking into a resource and taking your concentration away. And then Mr. Biz says that one nugget that would have changed your life forever. That would just crush me. And so please stick with us and stay with us throughout the show. And by the way, at the end of the show, you're going to get the opportunity to win a 5-night stay at a 5-star luxury resort in Mexico. Stay with us to the end. You'll see how to do that. We give away one every single show. It's awesome. All right, back to the topic at hand. Reachyourpeaklibrary.com. That is a website that I literally had put together with you in mind. You, the business owner, the entrepreneur, the ones that are the movers, the shakers, the ones that are looking to improve their lives, to improve the lives of others, which I often find most entrepreneurs are most driven by. And I've basically gathered and collected, these are all books I've personally read. and I personally vet. Not every book I've ever read is in here. They don't all make that grade. And so now you have at least one other successful person has vetted these. If you're looking for the next book, maybe your first book, this is a good list you can run down and just grab the first one that really calls to you. There's no need to actually look at all of them, because if you do that, you may never pick any of them. Does that make sense? And just pick one, read it, and then come back and find another. This is not a money-making website. It is simply here for you to have access to get the unbelievable value that these books bring. And these had incredible value, both business-wise and personal development-wise. And the cool thing about books is our next guest expert is no stranger to them. He's not only an avid reader, but he's also an author of not one, but 2 books. And we're going to be discussing one of those here this evening. And speaking of that, enough of my blabbing, right? Let's bring him on. Yeah? Yeah, I think we should. Here we go.
It's time for the Guest Expert Spotlight. Savvy, skillful, professional, adept, trained, big league, qualified.
And there he is, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Mr. Biz Wentworth. Yes, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, Brian. Thanks for having me.
He's coming all the way from the lovely state of Ohio. And I am currently in Southern California. That's what I love, what I get to do with this show. We're worldwide. I've interviewed people from all over England, Ireland, all over the place. It's been amazing. And enjoy being able to meet wonderful, fabulous people like you. And I can't wait. You have so many great stories, Ken. My gosh. One of the things I like to do is, first, I'm going to formally introduce you. I want people to understand, get a little bit of background about you, and then we're going to dive into the real you, if that's cool with you.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I like to see what makes a successful person tick from the inside. But first, Ken, Mr. Biz Wentworth, is a strategic business partner who works with business owners to help them operate more profitably and more efficiently. In addition, he is a 6-time world record holder in the drug-free powerlifting world. And specifically, we're talking about the bench press. And this is, I don't think he's telling the truth when he says how much weight he lifts, to be honest. We're going to ask him, and we want to see proof. No, I'm kidding. He's a beast in a great way. He regularly speaks to professional organizations, hosts B2B Radio, and founded Mr. Biz Solutions, an exclusive platform created specifically to provide affordable business expertise for small business owners. Thank you so much for doing that. He is often quoted and appears as an expert on small business topics in a variety of written online publications, as well as radio programs, including Forbes, American Express, Fast Company, NBC, ABC, Fox, Business News Daily, and the list goes on. I could read it all night, but we don't have time because I want to bring him on and get the wonderful juice out of his big, beautiful brain, if that's okay with everybody else. So, I love all that. I love all of the accolades, the experience. It gives us all an idea that you're out there. You're pounding the pavement. You're in publications. You're on radio. You're one of those go-getters, and that's what I love. I love to have go-getters on the show. Very successful. And what I like to find out is, being an entrepreneur, it's like super easy, right?
Oh, absolutely. Piece of cake.
The thing is, it is one of the most challenging things anyone could ever embark on. At least in my experience in my life, it is one of the most challenging. And it takes a lot to continue to stay driven, to stay motivated, to stay positive, to stay flexible. So for you, Ken, when you get up in the morning, and if you're anything like me, I'm kind of groggy a little bit in the beginning, and then I swing my feet around and they hit the floor and I start coming to. And then I start consciously start thinking about the day ahead, and I get excited and I get motivated. For you, what is it that goes through your mind at that moment that says, right on, I get to go and do this? What is it for you?
Usually what it is for me is before that is my brain likes to get up before my body does. And you probably can relate to that, and most entrepreneurs can as well, because I absolutely love what I do. And so I'll tell you, I have to practically overdose on melatonin on Sunday nights, because as I usually try to plan my week, sometimes Sunday evening, and write out all the different things I'm going to tackle during the week. but then I get it super jazzed up about it. And so sometimes it's bad for my sleep on Sunday night. So I usually, throw some melatonin down to make sure I can get some decent sleep that night. But I absolutely love what I do. I hop out of bed, and this might date me a little bit, but I hop out of bed like Tigger on Winnie the Pooh, right? So I'm bouncing all over the place, and sometimes I think I drive my wife a little crazy, but it motivates me. Helping people motivates me. I know that sounds very cliched, but helping people with what I love to do is just it's what makes me tick.
Fantastic. And one of the things we were talking about as far as making people tick is, you have written 2 books, not just 1, but 2. I'm still on the brink of finishing my first. As we were talking before the show, I was 90% done, and then something came up, and it's been almost a year since that time. It's crazy. It will get finished because it's a passion of mine. But you have authored a couple of books, and I wanted to showcase one of them, if you don't mind, right now, and maybe cover a few of the topics that you have in there. And I'll bring it up on the screen. It's called Pathway to Profits, and it's a Mr. Biz Guide to Running Your Business Like a Boss. I like that title. What inspired you to write this book?
Honestly, the first book. So my first book was How to Be a Cash Flow Pro. It was a short book. Actually started out, wasn't even going to be a book. I was compiling, cash flows, as most business owners have probably felt the pain at some point or another. Cash flow is something that impacts all businesses of all shapes and sizes, different parts of their life cycle, et cetera. And so I was compiling these and to give basically a sort of a PDF sort of thing as a reference point for clients. And as I continued more and more in compiling these, it kept getting larger and larger. And so finally, my brother said, "You got a book, like you need to publish this and make it a book." And I very hesitantly did so. And it just took off and did really well. And it sort of provided motivation for me. I'm like, geez, if people like that, I got a whole bunch more stuff I can share. And so that's what prompted and got me motivated to create Pathway to Profits. And I should mention Pathway to More Profits, which is basically volume 2 of this book, which covers a whole, there's basically 10 topics in this book. And there's 10 more additional topics that are, all business related topics that, that one's in rough draft form. So probably, I don't know, we're probably looking at May, June, something like that before we release that one.
So it's my goal to beat you to the punch and get mine done before then. My first one, that'll be your third. The competition is coming out in me, after
it's on. Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
After I learned what you bench pressed there, let's real quick. I that's a cool story, if you don't mind, because the cool thing is you did something that I don't know any mortal can do. And I mean that. I mean, it's kind of like, I forgot the guy's name, the marathoner that broke the 1 minute mile that no one had done before him. And it had been decades. And then finally, when he did, suddenly everybody did it. It was like a belief system had been broken through. Yeah. And so you did that personally. So if you wouldn't mind, letting us in on that story on your world records, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of lifting, and I was a certified personal trainer years and years and years ago, and was always training, was always athletically inclined, and was looking for something as an adult to be able to compete athletically. Was at the gym and kept getting stronger and things like that, and finally some guys that are actually competed in powerlifting at the gym said, "Hey, you should come train with us." And I said, "You guys are way stronger than me, et cetera, et cetera." And I said, "Okay, I'll make you a deal. If I get to the point where I can bench press 275 pounds, then I'll come and train with you." Because I feel like, okay, now I'm sort of in your realm, right? And so the day that I bench press 275 pounds, I said, I'm going to bench press 500 pounds. Oof. I don't know where that came from. And I was afraid that, as the saying goes, I'll clean it up a little bit, that I was afraid that my mouth was writing checks that my butt couldn't cash. Right. And so even the guys I trained with said, you might want to pump the brakes on that a little bit. 500 pounds. I mean, come on. But it was a 7-year journey. It took me 7 years to get from 275 to 500. So you want to talk about a gauntlet of injuries and curveballs and bumps in the road and all that kind of stuff to get there. And as you mentioned earlier, staying motivated during that entire 7-year process, the long journey of getting there was absolutely crazy.
I can imagine. And just that kind of weight, that is just unbelievable to me. I remember struggling to get to 200. I mean, especially, that was like the high school days and you're trying to impress the girls all the time. And I'm like, why is the chest one of my weakest areas? This is wrong. Cause that's where the glamour is, right? I bench press. I got
right. Yeah, no, it's, I was on the journey there. I mean, I ended up, as I was competing and, got strong enough and said, hey, I'll go to the nationals. And so I went to the national championships and did well. And then if you do well at the national championships, you get an invitation to the world championship. So, geez, this is pretty cool. And so I was fortunate enough, and I won, I don't know how many, several national and world championships along the way. And then, of course, came into the realm where, geez, I'm getting strong enough. I'm getting within sniffing distance of some world records here. And was fortunate enough to be able to, break a bunch of world records later in my career. That's basically what I lifted for. Was I was competing against myself. I wanted to break a record that I'd already held, or I even, and this makes it even a little bit crazier. So I'm always looking to challenge myself. And so I had set a world record in one weight class, and I'm like, well, I wonder if I could do it in 2. So I changed weight classes, and I wonder if I can do it in 3. And so I just kept changing weight classes, which is a whole nother challenge in and of itself, as you well know, Brian. And so that added that extra layer of competition for me against myself. Along the way, it's funny. Very, very, one of the biggest compliments I probably ever received, at least competitively, was I remember getting ready for the national championships, and they were typically the national championships are in April. And in January, because I hopped around weight classes, in January, I had a fellow competitor email me, and he said, hey, how's training going? Blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And he said, hey, by the way, you're going to nationals, right? And I said, yeah, of course. And he said, well, what weight class are you going to be in? And I said, well, I'm going to compete in whatever it was, 198-pound class. And he said, oh, okay, cool. We show up to nationals. He was in the 181 class. And he said, you caused me to go on a diet because I don't want to be in your weight class.
Oh man, that is awesome. They're hiding from you, running from you. Where is Mr. Biz going to be? And you probably weren't known by that. I'm imagining.
No, I definitely was not back then. No.
You were Mr. Dream Crusher back then. Oh man, yeah. And I heard or saw a story that you at one point you lost an incredible amount of weight to make weight in one day. I don't know how you did it. I would be so curious to find out how, if it's a quick system that you can share, but I know it's not the healthiest thing to do. And you probably bounce back right away just to make weight for the weigh-in, but it still was a lot.
Yeah. I found out quickly that, with weight classes and having 24-hour weigh-ins that, geez, if I could learn how to manipulate my body weight specifically through water weight, that could be a huge advantage for me. And so what did I do? You alluded to this early, right in the intro. I read a bunch of books about weight manipulation. I'm talking about last minute weight manipulation, like you hear about, infamous stories about wrestlers and things like that. But wanted to do it in as safe as manner as possible. So not just going on a diet and cut the carbs and all that kind of stuff. So read some books. The book I liked the most, I reached out to the author, and ended up spending a lot of time with him and learned, as you had mentioned, there's no need to recreate the wheel. Find someone who's already been successful in what you're trying to do. Reached out to him, ended up spending a lot of time with him, learned a ton from him, and started the process. How do I get good at this? Because for those unfamiliar, you weigh in 24 hours before you compete. So you have a full 24 hours to rehydrate, re-energize, all that kind of stuff. And I got to the point where I kind of had perfected it. I knew my body so well. I had tracked it. Again, I'm a numbers nerd, of course. So I had a big spreadsheet, and I knew where I needed to be and all that kind of stuff at different points during the day leading up to it. And so I would cut my weight in the last 24 hours before weigh-in. The most I had done was I cut 17 pounds in 24 hours. So I went from 215 down to 198. And then the next day when I competed, I was up near 215 again, because it was just a matter of manipulating my water weight. And so I could tell you exactly how I do it. And I've told a ton of people how I do it. But the problem is, and I don't mean this to sound braggadocious or anything, but the problem is it is absolutely torturous. It is horribly painful. You want to talk about determination that you have to have. My wife and my wife went the first time she went with me to a competition. I was cutting weight, and my wife's a nurse, I should mention. And I was going back and forth. One of the last things I do is I get in and out of a really, really hot Epsom salt bath. And when I say hot, I mean you come out and your skin looks like lobster red, right? And so that's one of the last things I do the last few hours to cut the last several pounds of body weight. And my weight wasn't coming off like it normally had, and I just couldn't figure it out. And after usually 3 or 4 baths, I get to where I need to. Well, I hadn't gotten there yet, and I'd taken 6 or 7, maybe 8 baths, right? And I'm starting to kind of freak out a little bit because I feel like crap, as you can imagine. Anyway, the cutting to the chase, I get out of we're in a hotel because we're in Chicago. I'm competing at the Nationals. And I come out and I get on the bed and I just collapse onto the bed. I got a towel on and I'm laying there, and my wife is on her knees on the bed, and she's like, "What can I do? How can I help you?" And in a very faint voice, I said, "Put a pillow over my face and smother me." Because I won't be able to stop you. And I know that I'm not going to stop until I get to making weight. So I'm going to keep going in and out of that bath until I get there. And it's killing me. So just put me out of my misery, She didn't do that, thankfully. But she did tell me that she would never be part of watching me cut weight again. And she hasn't been.
I can only imagine, someone you love that you're going to watch go through self-inflicted suffering. Whether it's self-inflicted or not, you don't want to see a loved one go through any kind of suffering and be a part of it, and like if she's there, she's probably internally thinking she's agreeing to the whole thing,
right?
Behind it.
Especially as a nurse, she's a healthcare professional, and she's, sitting back and thinking, her natural behavior is to help people. So she wanted to help, and she hadn't seen it before, as I mentioned. She knew about it, and but she hadn't actually witnessed it firsthand. So. And she has, according to her, she never will again. So
the reason I really wanted to hear this story again is because this is a wonderful lesson to everyone watching and listening when it comes to business. I mean, all the things, all the attributes and traits that are necessary to succeed, that's what Ken exhibited, the discipline, the suffering through pain, because in business, you're going to be doing things you don't want to do. You just got to get them done. It's like Eat That Frog. The book Eat That Frog talks about taking the most arduous task that you don't want to do and just get it done first. And going through, in your case, sacrifice of feeling good, sacrifice of health for a moment, and determination. Self-inflicted pain. We're not trying to inflict pain on ourselves as business owners, but I think you all are getting the idea by now. And the other thing is the power of a story. And this was a powerful story, because it exhibits all the parallel traits of what it means to be and takes to be successful, not just in business, but in life. He went through, the drive was intense. There's no way. Most mortals would not do this, unless there was an intense drive. There was a big why at the end for you in order to do that, because you wanted, and I loved how you also said you were only competing against yourself. And how unbelievably true is that when it comes to business? If we're looking at other businesses and trying to compare to them, well, they might be, 500 employees stronger than us and $200 million richer than us, and they have more resources. That would be a horrible thing to do, is compare yourself to them. Why not set your own goals and just keep improving? I was just hearing so many wonderful just tips, and I hope everybody got that, because entrepreneurship is not easy. I was obviously kidding at the onset. It's not made for the faint of heart. It's not for everybody. And that's okay. If you are that person, and if you're in it and you're feeling struggles, know that that's normal, and be okay with it. And just know that all you need to do is persevere and keep going, and never, ever, 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 ever quit. Like Ken.
Struggle is part of the journey. Struggle is part of the journey for sure.
Yeah.
And think about it. It's not just in entrepreneurship, it's in anything worth having. Nothing comes easy, right? As they say. And so the other thing, as you mentioned with the story, is I lean on some of those things that I've been able to accomplish in the lifting world, in the business world, because I look at it, the confidence that it gave me was immeasurable, because now I look at it, and again, this is going to sound maybe a little bit self-centered, but this is my sort of self-talk, is to say, you know what? If I can lose 17 pounds in 24 hours. Tell me what I can't do.
Exactly.
Right? If I can apply myself and use what I like to call consistent perseverance, if I can use that consistent perseverance to do something as crazy as losing 17 pounds in 24 hours, what can I not do? Right? Give me something I can't do, and I'm going to prove you wrong. Right? But you're right. It's never easy. The journey is never easy. That 7-year journey in my lifting career, going from 275 up to 500. I mean, again, there were several bumps in the road, a lot, and entrepreneurship is exactly the same way. But again, you got to use that consistent perseverance. You got to, that obstacle comes your way. You got to figure out how to go around it, go over it, go through it, whatever. But consistent perseverance, keep charging towards that end goal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great message. It's a life message for everyone. Looks like you've got a lot of followers here. Jason Alt said he had no idea about this whole other career of yours. I guess the powerlifting. And then you got another friend in here, Ken Walls.
Oh, there you go. Ken Walls in the house. K-Dub.
I guess Ken knows Jason.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, they know each other. Yeah.
And apparently Jason also knows Ken. That's pretty cool. Welcome, gents. Welcome all. I appreciate you coming on. This is an amazing story by an amazing man who has achieved much. And the overall governing message here is, now that he's achieved it, he can achieve anything, and he knows it. There's no doubt in his mind. Before, there's that inherent doubt in all of us. Every one of us has it. Unless you overcome an obstacle that's rather large, or what you thought was large in the past, unless you've done that, then you may still be in a state of struggling. So embrace the struggles is really where I'm going with this, is embrace them and just know that the moment you overcome that one, doesn't that feel great, Ken? I mean, that's Absolutely. The best part. It's like when you,
and again, as you mentioned, it's something you can lean back on, when times do get tough, because inevitably they will. And so you can look back on that, and that helps. I know it helps me sort of pick myself up by the bootstraps when those things happen, to say, holy crap, let me, look, what am I doing? I'm wallowing here in this, whatever this misery I have today.
Yep.
I've done all these other things that I know that I can get through this. This is no big deal at all.
That's interesting you say that, because in all honesty, I was going through that kind of state of mind 2 days ago. It happens to every one of us. We're all human. And it's rare for me anymore. And I was like, what is this? I don't like this. I'm feeling almost depressed. Where is this coming from? And I thought, well, geez, just think of everything that's going on right now. It's like, this is a great time to be alive. And, within a matter of minutes, I was back to being old Brian, but it was like, get away from me. This is a foreign area. You don't belong with me.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it hits everyone. It's inevitable. Like I said, things aren't going to be perfect. And you could pick out anyone that most people consider successful, and they all have those stories. Oprah Winfrey was originally turned down and said, you'll never work in TV. You're not good enough. Bill Gates, I forget the number, 52, 53 times he was turned down when he was trying to pitch Microsoft as an idea. I mean, everyone successful has used consistent perseverance to overcome those things and get to where they wanted to get to.
Yeah, it's like they say, I don't know if I got it right, but an overnight success takes 7 years to accomplish.
Right.
Hey, I've got a friend on here that has a question for you. His name is Richard Barrier, a good close friend of mine. He said he's trying to figure this one out. How do you start to build your team? And then he commented and followed on with that, just to put it in more perspective, since no one person can build a business by themselves. And thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I literally just talked to someone about this earlier today. I think for the most part, most entrepreneurs who start out as solopreneurs, one of the mistakes they make is that they wait too long to bring on folks, to bring on resources to help them. And for example, I had a recent discussion with someone who's a realtor, and he's explaining to me all these different things he's doing and what's taking his time. And I said, you got to hire a VA. I'm not saying you have to have a full-time assistant, but at least start with a virtual assistant. He said, Ken, I can't afford it. And I said, no, you can't afford not to. And let me explain to you why. You're a solopreneur, and when you're busy doing all these administrative tasks, what are you not doing? You're not doing what I call RPAs, revenue producing activities. So imagine hiring a VA that works for you for 5 hours a week. And you go, 5 hours, what's that going to get me? Well, let me tell you what it gets you. In a year, it gets you 260 hours, the equivalent for those who are inclined mathematically, the equivalent of 6 40-hour weeks, 6 full 40-hour weeks. It gains you and again, if you're the only revenue producer in your business, I mean, think about how many sales can you generate in 260 hours. It's absolutely incredible. So a VA would very quickly pay for itself if you utilize it. Now, if you use that 260 hours and go binge watch Netflix, of course, that's not really going to work out too well for you. But if you utilize that time, and that's what I think a lot of solopreneurs, you're trying to bootstrap and you're trying to do things like that, but you're not seeing the forest through the trees, as they say, and you're missing out on opportunities. But building your team, I think, is very important, and it's a way to scale, obviously, very quickly. I'll tell you real quick along those lines, one of the things I've learned, and I definitely would say anyone out there, follow me on social media. I share content on all the different platforms, Monday through Friday, sometimes if I'm feeling crazy on the weekends as well. So, and I do a lot of videos, short 4, 5, 6 minute videos, things like that on business topics and things. But, hiring folks, what I have found is I hire on 3 things. And this is one of the things I share every week is a Mr. Biz tip of the week. One of those tips is to hire on character, loyalty, and work ethic. If you have those 3 things, I can teach you anything else almost, right? I can't, obviously, if I'm trying to hire a brain surgeon, I'm going to, not really be able to do that, right? So some jobs you have to have a lot of technical skill, but for the most part, when I was hiring, when I was in the corporate world and someone, I would hear, well, they don't have enough Excel skills. I'm like, send them to a class. I don't give a crap about that. Do you have character, loyalty, and work ethic? Because if you have those 3 things, whatever I'm trying to teach you, I know that you're going to bust your butt to figure them out and learn them to be a good employee and be a great employee, as a matter of fact. So I've found over the years, those 3 things, if you hire based on those, you're going to be rock solid.
Yeah, Jennifer is saying, yeah, VA is the best. Richard said perfect answer. And he also said big mistake that he's made. Yeah, and we've all, that's the thing we do is we just learn from our mistakes. And we got another question coming up here in a minute, but I wanted to piggyback on that a little bit because that everything you're saying is spot on. I ended up getting Apprentices, and they have been a godsend to my business. I was a solopreneur before I started getting help. And I was going through the burnout, like you're alluding to, you're doing everything and it's impossible and you're losing out on so much. And so it was amazing to be able to bring on this help for just over $2 an hour, the equivalent of for these people. And they're in the United States, they're in Canada, wherever you want to choose them from. It's not a typical virtual assistant like some would do for overseas to get the price down. It's amazing, but I can't echo your sentiments more that it's like get help. And I also like to say not only help for you and your business, but also coaching and mentoring, like somebody like we're looking at right here, Mr. Bench Presser of 500 plus pounds. I mean, if he can do that, he can help you with your business. And I'm not kidding when I say that, because we've already talked about that. He's already overcome something that was a barrier that no one else had crossed ever in the history of mankind before. And he did it 6 times. And so this is a guy that you want in your corner is what I'm trying to tell you all. Alan Rogers has a great question here. I'll put it on the screen. Give us your definition of entrepreneur versus a wantrepreneur, a business versus a hobby.
Yeah. Unfortunately, speaking very bluntly and directly, there are way more wantrepreneurs than entrepreneurs in my book. There's a lot of people that talk the talk and don't walk the walk, or one of my favorite ways to put it, they're faking the funk. They are talking a big game and they're not really, doing the things necessary to actually be their idea. I'm an idea guy. I'm an idea woman. Right. And they have all these ideas. And then you talk to them 6 months later and you're like, hey, how about that project you were talking about? They're like, I kind of got busy. And that's a wantrepreneur. Like they never get anything done, honestly. And that's one of the things I talk about. Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. One of the things he says, and again, I'll clean it up a little bit for the viewers, but he says ideas are crap. Anyone can sit down and come up with an idea. Execution is where it's at. A lot of people don't know. For example, a real life example that most people would again maybe not know is there was an Uber before Uber, but they didn't execute. The guys from Uber that started Uber. I happened upon this. I forget what city they were in. I happened upon it and said, man, this is a really good idea, but it seems like they don't quite have this all down. And they started Uber. The first Uber, you don't know what it is because it's gone, right? Went belly up, went through a bunch of money. And Uber, I don't know, they're doing decently well, right? So think about that. It's all about execution. And that's one of the big differences between an entrepreneur and a wantrepreneur for sure. And the other thing, as far as the hobby thing, one of the things I say, and again, it's sort of blunt and a little bit harsh, but I think I used it as a Mr. Biz tip of the week at one point, is if you have a business and outside of the food service industry, if you have a business and your net margin is less than 10%. So not gross. A lot of people talk about gross margin, your net margin. So it's your net income divided by your revenue. I don't get too far on the number weeds here, but if that is less than 10%, you have a hobby, not a business. Unless you're in food service. Food service is very competitive, and it's tough to get to that double digit mark on the net basis. But look at your business now, and if you're less than 10%, you need to make some changes because you're working way too hard, and you could be making a lot more money.
Yeah, and that goes in perfect lockstep with a book I read by Mr. Michael Gerber, The E-Myth Revisited. We're talking about getting help so you can get to that above 10% margin, because without it, good luck. I mean, maybe for a little while, but you'll burn out. But he said, one thing I'll never forget, he said is the thing about businesses is if you have no systems in your business, then you have no business.
No business, right.
And I've never forgotten that. And I thought, wow, that was like right between the eyes. Because at that moment, I really didn't have them when I first read this book. And I said, and I got busy, put together some systems, got some help. As you are aware of, a lot of automation going on behind the scenes, and everything is a system now. And
how much of a difference did that make for your business, Brian?
Oh my gosh, I could not do this without it.
Right.
No way. I would have burned out a long time ago. We're now coming up. Well, it's been over a year now since I started this show, and just doing the show by itself was it took so much time. The getting and gathering of guest experts such as yourself, making sure they understood the proper lighting and camera and equipment and microphone. There's so many details that go behind making one of these live shows. If you want to do it in a high quality manner. And that's all I will do ever, is the highest I can. It just takes a monumental amount of work if you don't have a good comprehensive automated system in place. Still takes some work, but not nearly as much as it did in day one. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So people out there listening and watching, definitely keep that in mind and think about ways in your business to where you can hire additional resources to help you with those things. What Jennifer said, I was just going to get to that. Jennifer, you must be reading my mind. Is stick with stick in your wheelhouse, right? What's your game? Stick to your expertise and hire other folks to do those things. And especially when it comes to, as I mentioned, RPAs, revenue producing activities. Again, especially if you're a solopreneur, you are it as far as sales. And so anything that's taking you away from RPAs is not something that necessarily in most cases you want to spend your time on.
How did you know? Jennifer's an amazing woman. I met her, I think it was in August for the first time, and she was the MC at a wonderful event, and she did a marvelous job. She's a amazing woman in the fashion industry, if I recall correctly, and had her scheduled to come on the show, and it didn't work out then. And Jennifer, a reminder for you watching right now, we want to reschedule that, get you on quick, because you'll be amazing as well. And then, Richard said he's heard the same thing. I think about systems. If you have no systems, you have no business. And you're very, very welcome, Jennifer. Yeah. And wow, I love it. Thank you for all the comments and interaction. Keep them coming. Systems is a multiplier. This is what it's all about. This is what gets me excited. Having someone like you, Ken, because you are the inspiration to all of these people that are making these comments. It's because of your expertise and your wisdom. And I love bringing people like you on, because that is what this show is for, is to help people to get over the hump. And you just solidified in at least one person's mind the importance of getting help. And that's awesome. I mean, that just changed someone's life right there.
Good.
And, I mean, it may seem subtle to maybe you and maybe even them right now, but that is a direction shift in that one little course direction. If you're going a long distance, that's going to be a big different in destination spot when you get there. And it's an amazing, amazing thing. Just these that's what I try to impart upon my colleagues, my apprentices, my clients, is just continue to model success. It's really that simple. Find someone that's got the recipe, like Mr. Biz, Ken Wentworth, and Seriously. And then all you do is model, which is a fancy word for copy. And we all grew up that copying was against the rules. So we use the word model instead. So you don't think it's a bad thing, because it's not.
Right.
Because I know you would give everyone permission to copy everything you're saying right now. Right.
Oh, absolutely.
See?
Yeah.
Not only absolutely. He wants you to. Yeah.
No. And that goes, honestly, I'm glad you brought that up. It's kind of a little bit of a taboo subject for those of us who create information type products. I agree with Gary Vaynerchuk. Easy for me to say, Gary Vaynerchuk. Someone asked him one time, he puts out a tremendous amount of content, and someone said, gosh, why do you do that? Like, you give away everything. And he's like, because I want to help people. And the reality of it, and again, he's a very blunt guy and he drops a lot of profanity and whatnot, but he basically said, here's the thing, the person that really needs it is going to take it in action, and I will be able to help them. Yes. Most people are going to hear what I say and they're going to go, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. And they're never going to do anything with it. They're not going to execute like we talked about earlier. And so that was, what Gary Vee says about it. And I agree 100%. As I think I may have mentioned, I did a ton of videos. Like last year in 2019, I did 80 Facebook Lives.
Nice.
And so, giving content, and I take feedback. People say, oh, well, what about this? And so I'll cover that topic. And so absolutely, copy and replicate. I've done that throughout my career on different things, anything I'm tackling. As I mentioned earlier, even on the, weight manipulation thing, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So let me find someone who does. And again, read some books, and the one I like the most, talk to that author. That's another thing I'll mention. I'm blabbing on here, but as far as the author, it's a Steve Jobs quote. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. Don't be afraid to reach out to, someone you think is a celebrity or someone, oh my gosh, he or she will never get back to me. Absolutely not. I mean, when I first started my radio show, I was absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. And I told my wife, I said, I have to get better at this, or I'm not going to torture people that would even happen to listen to the darn thing. And so I reached out to 4 nationally syndicated radio show hosts, and I heard back from all 4 of them. And so some of the names you would say, oh my gosh, I can't even believe you wasted your time. It worked. You just never know. Most people that are very successful are willing to help. So don't be afraid to reach out and get that help. Yeah.
And that is so true that so many people hesitate because they think, oh, they're too busy. And you know what? Oftentimes they might be. Offer something in kind. Say, reach out, find out what their favorite charities are. Do some volunteer work for their charities. Do something that, don't just go out there looking for a handout, but also provide value in return if you can. But that's the thing. Even though you're successful, it doesn't mean you don't need help. You still need more help. The more successful you become, the more help you need. Wow, the questions are flooding in. I don't know if you'll have the answer to this, but I'm going to throw it up and see what we can do with it. This is Michelle Rusnak Singleton from someone in retail. How do you strategically combat rising costs? In other words, I need to raise prices to stay profitable, but in a small town, it can be difficult.
Yeah, especially in the retail side of things, that is a challenge for sure. I would say, especially when you're talking about on the retail side, the products, right? Your margins are going to be, it's going to be tough to increase margins, like I said, especially in a small town where maybe the economy might be difficult. What I would look to is, are there other expenses that you can cut back that are non-product related? Is there a way to get your rent reduced? Can you save on utilities? Can you cut down on some of your labor? I would look in other areas because, as you're right, those types of things, it's almost like a pass through, right? So you want to make sure you maintain a certain margin on those retail products. And there's not a whole lot you can do about that. I mean, if you're buying in higher volume and things like that, maybe you can get a volume discount, but that's difficult. So I would look on the other side, because there's almost always other ways that you can run your staffing and just a little bit more efficiently. And so it doesn't make a huge difference in a week or maybe a month, but over a year, 2, 3 years, it does have a cumulative impact. And so that's why I would answer that is look on the other side of things and see if you can make some changes there.
Fantastic answer. My goodness. It just keeps getting better and better. It takes a lot of skill to become a successful entrepreneur. Would you agree? I mean, you need to acquire skills, and it includes, like I was talking about with the business, there's so many facets of it, and there's no way one person that I've ever come across could become a master at all of those. But all you need to do is become very good and skilled in delegating and leading and then you've covered all of that. So I don't want to taint it any farther, but you being a successful entrepreneur, from your standpoint, if you were to pick just 3, what would you say are, at the moment, the top 3 skills needed to be a successful entrepreneur?
Geez, let me see. Only 3. Like 12 popped in my head. So let me try to do a little disk defragmenting in my brain here real quick. I would say the 3 most important, and some of this is going to sound repetitive because some of this I mentioned earlier, but first of all, as an entrepreneur, not just a business owner, and I want to differentiate because in my mind, not all business owners are entrepreneurs, and not all entrepreneurs are business owners either. So I want to differentiate a little bit there. So from an entrepreneur perspective, I would say the 3 most critical skills. Number 1, and these are sort of chronological, so to speak. Number 1, I would say imagination, creativity. Oof. You got to have it. You got to be a visionary. You have to be able to think things through and have those ideas. And you have to be the person that sits back. And when you're stuck in a line somewhere at a grocery store, you're the one sitting back going, man, I know they could do this better, but how? You need to have that creativity and that imagination. That's where I think it all starts. That's the genesis of different business ideas and coming up with those entrepreneurial type things. The second thing I would say is, again, I mentioned this earlier, is execution, right? You have this great idea and it's fantastic, but if you don't actually act on it and execute to its fullest extent, it means nothing. As Gary Vee says, ideas are crap. Okay. So that idea that you have, maybe you had the idea for Uber 15 years ago, but you never acted on it. Now you're kicking yourself saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. How many times you've heard people say, maybe you even said it yourself, when you see something come out and you're like, oh my gosh, these people made $1 gazillion off of XYZ product. Why didn't I think of that? Yeah. So again, having that imagination, creativity, and then executing. And then the third one, once you do those 2 things, I think, going back to what I alluded to earlier, is that consistent perseverance. Because as an entrepreneur, as Brian and I both have mentioned a few times already, hopefully not in a depressing way, but you are going to hit bumps in the road. I don't care how smart, I don't care how knowledgeable you are, or you're going to hit bumps in the road inevitably. So you have to be able to use consistent perseverance as you take your idea to execution and get it to where you need to get it to. It's going to take consistent perseverance to do that. If you're lacking any one of those 3, in my mind, you long-term will not be a successful entrepreneur. You have to have those 3 things.
I love that. Thank you so much. What a phenomenal answer. And, you hit on a couple things, but one that really stood out with me was the consistent perseverance and the fact that you're going to hit a few bumps in the road. And the thing is, most people think that the more successful they become, it's going to get easier and easier. And they can just, sit on that hammock out on the beach and have their umbrella drink and just everything's on autopilot. Well, maybe once you've sold your business, but getting up to that point, the opposite is true. You're going to have more and more and bigger bumps. The thing is you've learned the skill of how to react in spite of them. And now you know how to react to them and be flexible and solve each issue. And it's not a big ordeal. It's just more and more, because the more success you achieve, you just get more problems, more issues to solve. And that's okay. Right. That's what entrepreneurs do. That's almost the definition of an entrepreneur, as a problem solver. And so just wanted to get that out there, let people know the truth for those that might not know that truth. Yes. Jennifer's on fire. Imagination, creativity, action, never give up. That is right.
Yep.
And execution. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I'm in the process of building a very comprehensive, I had no idea what a behemoth it would be, info product. And it's, I started last April, 2019, and I'm getting close. I can start to see the end. And the thing is, I know this because I used to be this way. A lot of people will finish a product and go, finally, I'm done. But it couldn't be farther from the truth. It is just now the work is beginning, right? Because the most important part of it is the marketing and getting the word out there, the selling, the closing, and then the fulfillment. It's that's just scratching the surface. So know that after every corner, there's another one, and it keeps going. But the cool thing is it's a process. And as you achieve each micro goal, you're getting more and more confidence, just like Ken did, lifting over 500 pounds and breaking 6 records each time he did it, is like, this is going to be a piece of cake. It just takes what he said, consistent perseverance, and then it will happen. I mean, we just are perfectly melded together. I couldn't have picked 3 better ones, Ken. That was fantastic.
Well, and if I can really quickly, so that consistent perseverance it's another one. I've got probably 10 or 12 quotes that my family probably just absolutely, they got to memorize because they hear me say these things all the time. Right. But it's a quote by Babe Ruth. I think Babe Ruth is probably the greatest baseball player ever lived. And the quote, many of you have probably heard it before, but it is impossible to beat someone who never gives up. And that is, in a nutshell, what consistent perseverance is. I'm going to keep coming back. That story I shared about cutting the weight, when my wife said, "How do I help you?" And I said, "Just smother me, because I know I'm not going to stop."
Yeah. And that's it. My gosh. I used to, that's the thing. You don't have to have all of this God-given talent out of the chute. I've seen so many people in my youth when I was playing sports. I watched these kids come up and they would just try harder than me. I knew I had more talent than them, but they tried harder and they ended up getting more playing time than I did. And that really ticked me off, but it was a great lesson. It's like perseverance, consistency, and just hard work. Even though they weren't given those abilities, they melded them, and with their hard work and their hustle and all the other intangibles, they were like, coaches look at them like, you're in. And Kelly, sit your butt down. I didn't like those times, but they were great lessons. Oh my goodness. So in building an organization, when you build a team, it's very, very important that they understand, in my opinion, this is where I'm going, is they understand the culture of the business, which typically that stems from the leader. What is the culture? What are the values? Like you already just said, one of your values is not swearing on live TV, because you said, I'm going to clean this up, because you're going to give a quote by Gary Vee. That's one tiny example, but it's a good one, right? It kind of gives people the idea of, what you're about. How do you find those people that match your values, that truly care about your organization and the way that you do things?
Yeah, that's not an easy thing for sure, especially in today's world with the economy, thankfully, the way it is, and unemployment so low and things like that. I know a lot of my clients, frankly, every one of my clients struggles with not only finding people, but finding quality people. So, it's definitely a challenge. I'll go back to it, and I don't, not to repeat myself, but, one of the things, or the 3 things I really look for is, that to exude what I want to have, associated with my business and my brand, so to speak, are those, that character, loyalty, and work ethic. I mean, if you have those 3 things, I feel like everything else is possible, right? Again, I can teach you different things. I know if you have those 3 core values, more than likely we're going to align pretty closely with each other on many other things. Whether you're an extrovert, an introvert, it doesn't matter. Those things don't matter to me. As a matter of fact, I would much rather have a balanced team, have everyone that has those 3 characteristics, but I want some introverts, I want some extroverts. I mean, in the corporate world, I went through this when we had some, pretty large teams. We would assess when someone would leave the team. And this is something I guess ties into this, and maybe you should mention is, a lot of times we are, as humans, when we hire, we inevitably, without maybe subconsciously, we look for people that are like us, because you tend to think that the way you are is a good way, right? Hopefully. And so inevitably you start to look for people that are like you. And if you're not careful and aware and self-aware, what you end up with is a team of clones of yourself. And while that sounds fantastic on the surface, it's actually, in my mind, not a good thing, because you get a lot of groupthink. You don't get a lot of new idea type things. I had an example years and years ago in my career when we had our boss, and he had 7 direct reports. The 8 of us took the Myers-Briggs test, and 7 of the 8 of us were ENTJs. And he said, "Oh my gosh, this is fantastic. We're all leaders and blah, blah, blah." And I thought, I don't think it's that good, actually, because again, we think too similarly. We don't have enough diversity of skills and the way we think. And so I think, going back, I guess, to answer your question is, those 3 characteristics: character, loyalty, and work ethic. And then make sure that you have a diverse skill set outside of those things. And again, I don't just mean, oh, this person's good with numbers and this person's good at marketing. I mean, even outside of those types of things, again, even things like introvert and extrovert. Someone who's going to speak up in a meeting and not going to just sit back and say, oh yeah, be a yes man or a yes woman and say, oh, that's a great idea, Ken. That's a great idea. I don't want people like that. I mean, I want someone who's going to say, if I got a crazy idea that they think is not good, I want them to tell me why. I think those are some important things that to have and make sure you have. And a lot of that latter part comes down to you as a leader and being able to foster an environment where people feel comfortable coming forward with that. It's easy to, as I said earlier, fake the funk and say, oh yeah, I want to hear feedback. But then when someone gives you the feedback and disagrees with you, if you jump down their throat,
right,
it's never going to happen again. And so in that instance, you're faking the funk. You're talking out of this side, but you're not actually acting in the right way. So I kind of went off on a few tangents there from your question, but I think they're all sort of important things that tie into finding the right people to fit in your culture and organization.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that was like spot on. And yeah, because I've learned just by interviewing a lot of different candidates for apprenticeship, that I learned really quickly that it wasn't so important what skill set they had. It's everything you just mentioned: the character, the drive, the work ethic, the value system. And it's interesting because one of the absolute best apprentices I ever had very, very little skill in the area she ended up crushing it in. It was just unbelievable, uncanny. And she just churned it out, like video editing. And it was very difficult. It's a very time-consuming thing to do. And
Sure.
She had very little background in it, and she crushed it. And that taught me right away, the skills don't really matter. I know they all want to do marketing. That's where I get my my apprentices from, an organization that is all about marketing. And I developed a strategy and a whole onboarding system that helps me to vet and basically weed out and filter those that aren't a fit without my lifting a finger. It's all automated right now. So the beautiful thing is they don't have to have the skills specifically, because I got complaints from colleagues of mine who I told about this service, and they go in and go, well, I can't find somebody to do XYZ. And I go, that's why you're looking for somebody to do XYZ. You're
Right.
looking in the wrong area. It's not in the skill and the talent they have. It's in their character and their drive and everything you just mentioned. So very, very valuable.
And if I can, let me share just a real quick tidbit. Someone asked me, so they've heard me talk about this character, loyalty, work ethic, and so someone at a speaking engagement said, "Yeah, that sounds great, but Mr. Smart Guy, how do you measure in a job interview? How do you measure character, loyalty, work ethic? You can't just ask someone, hey, do you have good character? Well, what are they going to say? No, I'm an idiot. Like, I'm terrible, and I cheated on my taxes, and whatever." But I found a way that is, and again, if you're doing a virtual interview, you couldn't do this. But if you're interviewing people in person, this is an interesting thing, and you wouldn't necessarily make your entire hiring decision based on this. But this is a way to measure an element of those three things, and that is, let's say you're sitting in an office and you're interviewing. Make it so between where that person, the chair they're going to sit in, and the door, leave a piece of trash on the floor. In a trash can right next, really, really in close proximity, so they could see it, so they know they don't have to come behind you to throw it away. And there's no way, put the trash in a position that there's no way they couldn't see it, right? They have to step over it to get to the chair.
Yeah.
The person who steps over that piece of trash, not every time, but in many cases, the person that's going to step over that's the person that you're going to hire, and you're going to ask them to do something, and they're going to go, that's not my job.
Yeah.
The person who picks it up, and not in every situation, but those are the type of people that say, there's a problem and I'm going to fix it. Doesn't matter if it's on my job description or not. I'm in here for a job interview. I'm not here to pick up trash. But they see there's a problem and they're going to fix it, regardless of the scenario. It's a simple thing, but it speaks volume, and I think it's very powerful.
So are you good with going on another hour? Because we're at our 1 hour right now, and we have more to go. And we got more questions coming in. I want them all to be heard, but we just don't have time. Thank you so much, all of you, because I want to get to, there's one final question that I ask every of my special guests. And you may have saw it last week. I saw you were kind of lurking in the weeds there, watching that show.
No, listen, I follow directions, Brian. And you did. So for those who don't know this backstory, so I was checking out some episodes and things like that to see the flow of the show. And I was watching last week. And he got towards the end of the show and he goes, okay, well, I know Mr. Biz is out there and you got to turn off and not watch this last part because this last part I want it to be a surprise. So I shut it down.
Oh, so man.
I'm very perplexed and I'm sort of a little bit anxious on what this question is.
Oh, cool. That's the intent. I'm just kidding. No. So it's awesome because it's a question that I end every show with because it's a very compelling question I found kind of by accident. I used to ask it in intermixed order and realized, wow, this is an amazing one. It's got a lot of interesting answers coming back. And so it's really telling in so many ways, and it's powerful. But before we jump into that, I promised everyone, because we're at the 1 hour mark, before everyone jumps off, that they had the ability to win a 5-night stay at a 5-star luxury resort in Mexico. So I want to segue into that really quick and give you the means to enter. So if you're looking at the screen right now, you now have our permission, both of us, to pull out your phone and take your gaze off the screen for just a moment, if you're not already watching on your phone, and bring up your phone app and type in the number 661-535-1624 in your message application, text messaging application, 661-535-1624, and send the word PEAK. Just make that your message, PEAK, peak. So once more, 661-535-1624, and type the word peak in there, and we will randomly draw one winner. And I hope every one of you win, even though I know only one of you can. I just love everyone, and I want everyone to be a winner. You are all winners no matter what. And then before we get to that last question, because Mr. Biz has something he'd like to offer as well. It's been a while, so I don't even know if you remember what it was. If you need me to remind you, I will do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So look, anyone who's watching or listening, we alluded to a little bit, my most recent book, Pathway to Profits. If anyone out there wants a copy of it, I'll give you a copy of it. Just shoot me an email, or shoot us an email at orders@MrBizSolutions.com. That's orders@MrBizSolutions.com. Shoot me an email and say, hey, I'm in. I want a free copy of the book, and I'll give you a copy of the book. It won't, not one chapter, not half the book, the whole darn thing. The more people I can get it in the hands of and hopefully help folks, the better. So shoot us an email and we'll get you a copy of the book out there and hopefully be helpful for you.
And for all of you that love Audible, so does Ken. He loves doing the Audible portion of it and creating it for you. I'm being so sarcastic right now because it was a lot of labor to do the first one. He did Audible for the first book, and this one, I hope you do it again. I know it's a lot of, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy out of you. Awesome. I know we're getting lots of great. Awesome. Great example of the trash picking up test. Yes, I so agree. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Richard, for all those great inputs. And all right. You know what time it is, Ken?
It's time. Is it hammer time?
It's time for that question. So here's the thing. Thank you, number one, for following directions and not ruining the surprise, because it would just you would have had a week to think about it, and that wouldn't have been the right answer anymore. So here's the whole thing. The key to this is there is no such thing as a wrong answer. It doesn't exist. It's impossible to answer it incorrectly. The exact opposite is the case, where only your answer is the correct answer.
I like that. Plus, you can't fail.
Right. And it's personal, but it's not getting into your personal business, if that makes sense. It's just everyone has a unique take on this question, on the answer to it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think. Let me hear the question first.
All right. We were, I wasn't intentionally building this up or anything like that. I wouldn't do that.
No, of course not. Not you, Brian.
No. I mean, we got to have some excitement on the show, right? Like we've had for over an hour already. This is awesome. All right, here we go. Ken Wentworth, how do you define success?
Now I'm wishing I would have had a week to think about it. How do I define success? That's a a deep question. I would say sort of alludes to sort of what you said as you're asking the question. I think for me, success is defined primarily by who you are and then what your goals are, what you aspire to be, I guess. And so taking that a step further, I guess what I would say is I define success as, it sounds a little esoteric, but fulfilling your purpose in life, whatever that is, right? So again, for each of us, that's a different thing. And so some people, it might be monetary. Some people, it might be spiritual. And when I say that, fulfilling your purpose, I mean that from several different aspects. So I think success, at least for me, success, for example, with family life is probably different than others. With my business, I may have different goals and things like that. So I think I would probably define it that way as sort of fulfilling your purpose in life and in different aspects of your life. That's what I would call success.
Fantastic. You know, the really interesting thing about that question is no two people yet have answered it the same way, the same exact way. That's why I did all the, drama in the beginning saying there is no such thing as a wrong answer, because it's true. And there's no such, the only correct answer is yours because it's true. They're so unique.
It'd be very interesting, Brian, to compile all the answers you got, because if you're talking with all these different people, it'd be probably amazing to read through all the different answers.
I love you, brother. I've been basically saying that almost every show. I'm compiling it into a book.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? And this is from all successful people, including yourself, that, so to give people a different perspective on what success means, because it only means one thing to every individual at any given point in time. It can change over time.
Sure.
Like in the beginning, when we're just starting out, there's a lot of scarcity in our mindset, and money might be one of the biggest things that's on the forefront of our mind to define ourselves as being successful. And the interesting thing is, on this show, not yet has there been one that was money centric in their answer. Isn't that interesting?
Sure. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, one mentioned the importance of it and then clarified that was to then give them the liberty they wanted to live the life they wanted to. It wasn't about the money and material things. It was about freedom. And so it was just amazing. What a great book idea. Yes, of course. Already on it. Can you imagine what the book would? All right. Getting some great stuff from my buddy, Richard Barrier. Thank you, all of you, for coming on. I will check those text messages to see who is going to win that wonderful vacation. But more importantly, Ken, thank you so much for spending all this time with us tonight. I know it's late there. It's 9, almost 10 o'clock in Ohio. You're an amazing guy. And, like I said before we came on, if I'm ever in a dark alley, I just hope you're next to me. Someone who can lift over 500 pounds. Come on now. We got to have that. My bodyguard right there. Real quick, what is the best way for folks to get in touch with you? What is your favorite mode for them to do that?
Just shoot me an email, follow me on social media, Twitter, Mr. Biz Tweets on Twitter. Again, I think Brian had put some of the links on. But yeah, you can shoot me an email. You can use that email. We've got a bunch of different things, but that'll get routed to me eventually. And yeah, just reach out via any way that makes sense. We've got follow our Facebook page, Mr. Biz Solutions. Again, I share a ton of content on there. A lot of different videos. And again, I take requests, right? I'm like this is going to date me, little Casey Kasem, right? I take some requests, long distance love dedication. But yeah, follow up with me. And if there's a topic you'd like to hear me do a video on, like I said, I usually do 4, 5, 6 minute video. That's tops, and try to be concise, and happy to help any way I can.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh. You have been an absolute gem, my friend. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for coming on, spending your time. The value has been immense. I was telling everybody else to write notes. Here I am running the show, and I've got a page of them myself. Happens every time. So thanks once again, and stay on real quick. Once we're done here, I want to chat with you just a little bit and then let you go. But for everyone else, thank you for coming on and for contributing all that wonderful value and questions and comments. Appreciate you all. Love you all. We will see you again next week on the next edition of the Mind Body Business Show. So on behalf of Mr. Biz, Ken Wentworth, I am Brian Kelly, the host of the Mind Body Business Show. We will see you again next time. Be blessed. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you for watching and listening. This has been the Mind Body Business Show with Brian Kelly.